My name is Alexander Fletcher, and at my own daughter's wedding, my son-in-law hit me so hard in front of 80 guests that I felt a tooth come loose in my jaw. I want you to hear the whole thing, start to finish, because by the end, you'll understand why I didn't hit him back. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you how we got here. The reception was at my own salvage yard. String lights running between the crane and the office trailer. Folding tables set up in the gravel lot between rows of stripped-down cars my granddad started hauling in back in 1961. My daughter Evelyn wanted it there. Said the yard was the only place that ever felt like home after her mother passed. I should have known something was wrong the second Cody started drinking heavier than a groom should on his own wedding night. He found me by the garage bay, away from the tent, a beer in one hand and something harder in his eyes. "We need to settle this, Alex," he said. "Tonight." "Settle what?" "The yard, the deed, Evelyn's future." He said it like he was reading off a checklist. I told him this wasn't the time. He laughed, short and ugly, and said louder than he needed to, "It's the perfect time. Everybody's here." That's when I understood he wanted witnesses, wanted me cornered. He pulled a folder out from under his jacket, already had paperwork drawn up, transfer of ownership, my signature line sitting empty at the bottom. "Sign it," he said. "Evelyn deserves this place free and clear. You're 68. You limp when it rains. How much longer you think you can run a junkyard alone?" I said no. Plain as that. No. His face changed. Something in him just snapped loose. "You selfish old man," he said, and before I could step back, his open hand came across my face so hard my head cracked sideways into the door of a rusted-out pickup. I went down on the gravel, felt my lips split, felt a tooth shift wrong in my gum, tasted blood thick and hot. The music stopped. I heard somebody scream. 80 people who 5 seconds earlier were eating wedding cake, now standing frozen, phones already up, recording. I looked up from the ground, and Cody was standing over me, chest heaving, and he leaned down close enough that only I could hear him say, "That's what happens when you make me look weak in front of my own wedding, old man. Sign the papers, or next time it's worse." I looked past him for Evelyn. She was standing at the edge of the crowd in her dress, hand over her mouth, tears already falling, but she didn't move toward me, didn't rush to her father bleeding on the ground. She just stood there staring at Cody, like she already knew this side of him, like it wasn't the first time she'd seen it, just the first time she'd seen it aimed at me. I got up on my own. Nobody helped me. My jaw was already swelling, my shirt collar going red at the edge. I looked at every face in that crowd, people I'd known 30 years, people who bought their first car off my lot, people who came to Margaret's funeral, and I said the only thing I had left in me: this wedding's over. I walked past the tent, past the cars, out to my truck at the far gate. Behind me, I could hear Cody calling my name, his voice cracking now, panicked instead of angry. I didn't turn around. I sat in my truck cab with my hands shaking so bad I dropped my phone twice before I got the call through. It rang once. "Alex, everything all right?" "Liam," I said, wiping blood off my chin with the back of my hand. "I need you out here tomorrow morning. Bring whoever you need to bring." There was a pause on the line, careful, like he already knew what I meant. "You sure about this? Once we do this, there's no walking it back." I looked out the windshield at my own salvage yard, at the wreckage of a wedding still glowing under string lights, at 80 people standing around not knowing the ground under their feet wasn't mine to give away. Hadn't been mine, not really, not for 25 years. "I'm sure," I said. "It's time somebody told my son-in-law exactly whose land he just put his hands on." I hung up,
touched my swollen jaw and drove home alone in the dark, because what Cody didn't know yet, what nobody standing in that lot knew yet, was that the deed he wanted so bad to force out of my hands wasn't mine to sign in the first place. And come morning, he was gonna find that out the hard way.
I didn't sleep that night. Sat at my kitchen table with a bag of frozen peas against my jaw, replaying the last 2 years in my head, trying to figure out exactly when I stopped being Evelyn's father and started being a problem Cody needed to solve. It didn't start with anything big. It never does. "Dad seems tired lately," Evelyn said to me one Sunday, almost 18 months back, standing in the office trailer while I did the books. "Cody thinks you're doing too much out here by yourself." I told her I was fine, 66 years old and still able to pull an engine block by hand. But she had that look on her face, the one that said she wasn't really asking, she was reporting something back to somebody. Cody had never touched a wrench in his life, sold insurance out of an office downtown, wore a tie to a salvage yard cookout once like he was walking into a boardroom. But somehow, within a year of meeting my daughter, he had opinions about how I ran my own business. "You ever think about what happens to all this when you're gone?" he asked me once, standing in the middle of the lot, looking at the rows of cars like he was pricing them out in his head. Evelyn should have a plan, in writing. I said the yard would go to her regardless, didn't need paperwork for that, just my word. "Your word's not a legal document, Alex," he said, and smiled like he'd made a joke. The comments kept coming, little ones. "Dad seems confused lately. Dad repeated himself at dinner. Dad left the gate unlocked again. Anybody could have walked off with the good parts." Some of it was true. I did leave the gate unlocked once. I'm 68, not perfect. But Cody took every small mistake and stacked it into a story where I was slipping, where I couldn't be trusted alone with what my own granddad built. The worst part wasn't Cody. It was watching my daughter start to believe it. "Are you doing okay out here by yourself, Dad?" she asked me one evening, genuine worry in her voice. Worry that wasn't hers to begin with. It had been planted there, watered, grown careful and patient by a man who'd never lifted a jack in his life. I started paying closer attention after that, started noticing how Cody would tell Evelyn things I supposedly said, conversations that never happened, agreements I never made. "Dad told me he's ready to slow down, that he wants help managing the place." I never said that, not one word of it. When I asked her when I supposedly said this, she told me it was during a talk Cody and I had by the crane last week. I remembered that conversation. Cody had cornered me asking about the property's value, and I gave him one-word answers and walked off. Somehow that turned into me begging for help I never asked for. That's when I understood what I was dealing with. Not a son-in-law who loved my daughter and worried about her old man. A man running a slow, patient con, using my own daughter as the delivery system. I called my lawyer, Lexi Armstrong, the same week, told her what was happening, the comments, the gaslighting, the way Cody kept steering conversations toward the deed. "Has he asked about ownership directly?" she asked. "At every chance he gets." "Alex," she said, careful, "does he know the truth about the yard, about the arrangement?" "No," I told her. "Nobody knows that but you, me, and Liam." She went quiet for a second. "Then he's about to make a very expensive mistake." I should have told Evelyn everything right then. Should have sat her down and explained the truth about the yard before Cody's lies went any further, before the wedding, before any of this got the chance to turn into what it became. But I didn't. I kept hoping she'd see through him on her own, kept believing my smart daughter would notice the pattern before I had to be the one to break it for her. 2 weeks before the wedding, I caught Cody in the yard alone, phone to his ear, walking between the rows of cars like he was measuring something. When he saw me, he ended the call fast. "Business call, you know how it is." I didn't know how it was.
I'd never made a business call standing in the middle of somebody else's property without asking first. That night, I sat down and started writing everything down, every lie, every twisted conversation, every date, building a record I hoped I'd never need. I had no idea, sitting at that kitchen table 2 weeks before the wedding, just how much worse Cody was about to get, or how public he was willing to make it.
The truth about the salvage yard goes back 25 years, to the worst winter of my life. My wife Margaret had been sick for over a year, cancer that ate through every dollar we had and then kept eating. I remember sitting in a hospital billing office staring at a number with 6 digits on it, wondering how a man buries his wife and keeps a roof over his daughter's head in the same season. Then Margaret passed, and 2 months later, the bank started calling about the yard. Back taxes, unpaid loans, a business barely limping along while I'd spent every waking hour at her bedside instead of behind the counter. I was about to lose everything. Evelyn was 9 years old. That's when a man named Liam Morgan showed up at my gate in a car too clean for a salvage yard, representing a group that bought distressed family businesses and land, kept the family running the place day to day, paid a fair salary, covered the debts, and let the public keep thinking nothing had changed. In exchange, the deed went to them, quietly, permanently, unless I ever earned enough to buy it back. I signed that contract the same week Margaret was buried. Told myself I'd explain it to Evelyn when she was old enough to understand. Then she got old enough, and I kept finding reasons to wait. Told myself it didn't matter since nothing about her daily life had changed. She grew up thinking the yard was ours, because in every way that mattered to her, it was. I never planned on it staying secret this long. But the years went by easy, and easy years don't force hard conversations. Then Cody came along, asking questions no boyfriend has any business asking. Property values, mineral rights on the land behind the lot, whether the business was mortgaged. When I caught him taking photos of the rows of cars like he was building an appraisal, he told me he was just curious about Evelyn's future. I didn't believe him then either. 2 weeks before the wedding, I called Lexi and told her I wanted 2 things done quiet and fast. First, a full medical evaluation, cognitive, physical, everything on paper, because I could feel Cody laying groundwork to make people doubt my mind before he ever laid a hand on me. Second, I wanted to know exactly who Cody Barnes really was. Doc Patricia ran every test in the book. Blood pressure of a man 20 years younger, cognitive scores clean across the board. "You're sharper than half my patients half your age," she told me, and I kept that paperwork in my safe because I already knew I'd need it. What Lexi found on Cody took longer, and it was worse than I expected. He wasn't just some insurance salesman who fell for my daughter. He was 3 months behind on 2 credit cards, had a personal loan out he'd already defaulted on once, and, this was the part that turned my stomach, his employer had opened an internal investigation into him 2 months earlier for falsifying client paperwork to pad his commissions. He was likely to be fired by the year was out. He knew it was coming. A man like that, drowning in debt, watching his job disappear, suddenly engaged to a woman whose father owned 11 acres of land in a business that had been there 60 years. I understood exactly what he was looking at. He wasn't seeing my daughter's future. He was seeing his own bailout. I called Liam again that week. "We might have a problem," I told him. "Evelyn's fiancé is asking questions I can't answer without exposing the whole arrangement." "How serious is it?" "They're getting married in 2 weeks." Liam was quiet a long moment. "Alex, you know the terms. If an outside party discovers the true ownership, the group has grounds to end the arrangement." I knew that clause by heart, read it 100 times over 25 years. It existed to protect them from exactly this kind of mess, a stranger marrying into the family and making claims on land that was never mine to promise. "What do I do?" I asked. "Tell your daughter the truth before the wedding, not after. If she's marrying this man, she deserves to know what she's actually inheriting." I meant to, I really did, but every time I tried to sit Evelyn down, Cody was there, steering the conversation somewhere else, filling her head with plans for the property, talking about improvements, expansions, what the land could be worth if it were managed properly. I didn't know just how far he was willing to go to get it.
I found out 3 days later, standing under string lights at my own daughter's wedding, when he decided the fastest way to get that deed was to put his hand across my face in front of everyone I knew.
Liam arrived at 7 the next morning with 4 other people in 2 black SUVs, tires crunching over the gravel of my own lot. I watched from the office trailer window as they stepped out, sharp suits standing strange against a backdrop of stripped engines and rusted hoods. Liam introduced them one by one. Margaret Caldwell, who ran the whole group and had a way of looking at you like she already knew your answer before you gave it. A lawyer, a man who handled their financial side. A woman named Patricia who, it turned out, handled exactly this kind of situation. Family members trying to defraud their way into land that wasn't theirs. "We did some digging on Cody Barnes overnight," Margaret said, standing in my office with a folder in her hand. "It's worse than debt and a bad job review, Alex." She laid it out plain. Cody wasn't just behind on payments. He owed money to people who didn't send polite reminder letters when you missed a due date. And the internal investigation at his job wasn't just about padded commissions anymore. Their lawyer had found evidence he'd forged a client's signature on a policy renewal to collect a bonus he wasn't owed. Forgery. That's a felony charge waiting to happen, all on its own. "He's desperate," Patricia said, "and desperate men do exactly what he did to you last night." My phone rang while they were still laying it all on my desk. Cody's name on the screen. Margaret nodded for me to answer, and their lawyer quietly started recording. "Alex, look, I know last night got out of hand," Cody said, his voice smooth again, like the last 12 hours had softened him back into the man Evelyn first brought home. "I'd had too much to drink. We're family now. Let's fix this today. I'll come by, we'll sign the papers, put it behind us." "Come by what time?" I said, keeping my voice flat. "Noon. Bring the deed." He hung up, sounding almost cheerful, like a man who'd already won. Margaret looked at the room. "Good. Let him come. We'll be here." Cody's BMW pulled through my gate at 10 till noon, dust kicking up behind it like he owned the road. He walked in wearing a tie again, briefcase in hand, like he was closing a real estate deal instead of finishing off an old man's business. He spread the transfer papers across my desk without so much as looking at my swollen jaw. "Smart move, Alex. This is really best for everyone. Tell me about your job first, the forged signature, the bonus you weren't owed." His hand froze over the paperwork. The color went straight out of his face. "Who told you that?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is whether Evelyn knows." He stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "You've been investigating me." "I've been protecting my daughter. Same thing you claim to be doing to me." That's when the SUVs pulled back into the lot and Cody heard the doors slam outside. I watched the panic cross his face in real time as he looked out the window and saw 5 strangers walking toward my office, none of them smiling. "Who is that?" he said, voice cracking. I looked him dead in the eye. "Those are the people who actually own this yard, Cody, not me. Never me." His briefcase hit the floor, papers spilling everywhere. "That's not possible," he said. "I've been telling the truth about a lot less than you think, and in about 30 seconds, you're gonna understand exactly how much trouble you just put yourself in for hitting a man who works for people worth more than you'll make in 3 lifetimes. The door opened behind him before he could say any more.
Margaret Caldwell walked into my office like she'd done this 100 times before, because she probably had. "Mr. Barnes, I presume," she said. "I'm told you had some paperwork you wanted signed today." Cody's eyes went from her to the lawyer to the security man standing in my doorway, and I watched him do the math, watched him realize there was no smooth talk that got him out of this room. "This is a setup," he said. "No," I told him. "This is just the truth finally catching up to you." Margaret's lawyer laid it out cold and simple. The recording of Cody's phone call that morning, the assault caught on a dozen phones at the wedding, the forged signature at his job, the debts he owed to people who didn't forgive them. Attempted fraud, assault of a senior citizen, forgery. Any one of these is enough to end you. Together, you're looking at real time. Cody's legs seemed to give out from under him. He dropped into the chair across from my desk, head in his hands, the confident man from the night before gone completely. "There's also the matter of your marriage," Patricia added, checking a folder. "Our investigation found some concerning gaps in your divorce filing from your first marriage. It may not be finalized the way you told Evelyn it was." That landed on him harder than anything else. His head came up, face white. "You have 1 hour to gather your things and leave. You will not contact Evelyn. You will not set foot on this property again. If you do, everything we just laid out goes straight to the district attorney and to every creditor you owe. Do I make myself clear?" He didn't answer. He just gathered the scattered papers off my floor with shaking hands and walked out past me at the door, stopping just long enough to say, "Alex, I really did." "Don't," I said. "You lost the right to finish that sentence when you put your face on my face in front of my own daughter."
I watched his car disappear down the road for the last time. The hardest part of that day wasn't Cody. It was driving to the hotel where Evelyn was staying and sitting across from her in a small conference room with 5 strangers in suits, watching 25 years of careful silence finally come apart in her hands. "You own the yard?" she said, staring at Margaret like the words didn't make sense strung together. "You own my father's yard?" "For 25 years, Margaret said gently. "Your father has run it faithfully the entire time. We've simply held the deed." I watched my daughter's face go through every stage: confusion, disbelief, then something that looked almost like grief, like she was mourning a version of her childhood she thought she understood. "Why didn't you tell me?" she said, turning to me, voice cracking. "I kept waiting for the right moment," I told her, "and then I kept telling myself there wasn't one. That's on me, Evelyn, not you." They laid out everything about Cody then. The debts, the forged signature, the first marriage that might never have legally ended. Evelyn sat very still through all of it, and when they finished, she said one thing. "I let him convince me you were losing your mind. I actually looked up places, care facilities, because he told me you were forgetting things, saying things you never said." Her voice broke completely. "I almost helped him take everything from you. You didn't know. He made sure of that." We sat together a long time after everyone else left the room. Just her and me, the same as it had been most of her life before Cody ever walked into it. 3 months later, Evelyn moved back home for good. Not out of guilt, she made that clear, but because for the first time since the wedding, the yard felt like something worth fighting for honestly, instead of something being fought over behind her back. She learned the business from the ground up that spring, worked the counter, learned to read a title history better than I ever had, and started asking Margaret real questions about buying the place outright. 6 months after that, we signed the papers together, me, her, and Margaret Caldwell, who brought a bottle of something expensive to mark the occasion. 25 years ago, we bought this place to keep it standing. Today, we're handing it to the person who'll keep it standing longest. Evelyn owns the yard now. I still work it every day, just answering to her instead of a company 3 states away. And honestly, that's the better arrangement. We never heard from Cody again. Last word from Margaret's people placed him 2 states over, still running from the same debts, still telling the same kind of story to somebody new probably. Some nights, I still think about that split second at the reception, the sound of his hand against my face, the silence after, my daughter frozen at the edge of the crowd instead of running to me. I used to wonder if I should have seen it sooner. Now I just think about what came after. The truth finally sitting between us instead of a secret. My daughter standing in that office every morning, hands calloused, running something that's actually, legally, completely hers. That's the whole story. Thanks for staying with me through it.